I want to welcome you to the April 2nd, 2013 regular meeting of the Bowling Green Board of Commissioners. I invite you to stand if you'd like to have Elder Stephen Skinner, who's the pastor of Faith Missionary Baptist Church, is present with us tonight to provide an invocation. Pastor Skinner, thank you for being here.
Thank you. I invite you to bow with me. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this privilege to call upon Thy holy name, Thee who created everything. We marvel at the fact that as we dwell in this sinful flesh and upon this sinful earth, that we have this privilege to approach Thee in Thy holiness. We thank Thee, dear God, above all things, that You saw fit to send Your Son, and that He took upon Himself our sins and paid in full the penalty for us all. I thank Thee, dear God, for the benefit of my own soul, and also, dear God, that it gives me the privilege to tell my fellow man of Thy grace, and that You would that none would perish, but that all would come into eternal life. While we thank Thee most of all for those rich spiritual blessings and the eternity of promise, we thank Thee, dear God, for the temporal things. We thank Thee, dear God, for the privilege of living in this wonderful nation. And we'd ask Thee, dear God, that You would preserve it. Help us to return, dear God, to our founding to some degree. And we ask Thee, as You see fit, that You would continue to bless her. And we thank Thee, dear God, for the privilege of living in this community. And we ask Thee that You would be with our leaders this evening. Help them to fashion their decisions around the precepts that You have left us. For we know that You gave us those because You love us. You know our nature, and You know, dear God, the things that we require. So help us in our lives and our leaders as they make these decisions this evening, that they would be fashioned around the wisdom that we find in Thy Word. We ask Thee, dear God, that You would forgive us of our sins. Give us greater zeal to serve Thee, and these further blessings and favors we beg in the name of Thy dear precious Son. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Commissioner Rick Williams will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Schaller, please call the roll.
Commissioner Hill is absent. Commissioner Waltrip?
Here.
Commissioner Williams?
Here.
Commissioner Denning?
Here.
Mayor Wilkerson?
Here. Commissioner Febo, do we have any awards or recognitions?
I do not, Mayor.
I do not. Does anyone from the board? All right, any comments?
No comments.
First item on the agenda is approval of the regular meeting minutes from March 19th, 2013.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Denning, second by Williams. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. At this time, we have a portion of our meeting that allows people who would like to make comments about an item that's not on the agenda. We invite you to the microphone at this time if there's anyone that would like to do that. Seeing no one step forward, we'll go to Municipal Order 2013, number 47.
Municipal order approving the appointments of John David Cole and Harry Ford to the Hobson House Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Waltrip and second by Williams. These are replacing James Harris Jr. and Regina Jackson, who have served their term and asked to return to regular service. So we appreciate David Cole and Mr. Ford stepping forward to help us out on the Hobson House Commission. Any other comments? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Municipal Order 2013-48.
Municipal order authorizing and accepting bid number 2013-25 for fiscal year 2012 sidewalk construction program phase 2 from Stuart Ritchie Construction Incorporated of Bowling Green, Kentucky in the total amount of $177,019.50.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Waltrip and second by Williams. Mr. Febo.
Thank you, Mayor. We're here tonight to consider Phase 2 of our 2012 sidewalk construction program that will involve approximately 1,100 feet of new sidewalk, as well as ADA-compliant ramps in Lehman and Ogden neighborhoods. Kyle Hunt is here to talk to you about the process we went through to bring these to you today. Kyle?
Kyle Hunt from Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Febo, and good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Basically, this is a typical process like we do for any sidewalk project that's part of the annual construction program. We presented these to you along with, I believe, 3 other projects. Those were broken out due to ease of construction into a separate phase. Survey and design took a little bit longer with these 2 projects. So, but typically what we do with the sidewalk project is once the commission approves the candidate projects that we recommend, we work with Karen Foley with Neighborhood and Community Services to coordinate and schedule public meetings for each location. Typically, we like to have all of them together. It just makes for easier meetings. And then if there is opposition, we talk to those parties directly, see what concerns they have, see if we can incorporate that into the design of the project. And we like to do that before design, just for the fact that if we do run into an issue, we can address it then, rather than being at the end of the project with design being close to being completed. It may take additional time and resources to make any changes. But these 2 projects, like I said, were addressed in a typical manner. The public meetings were held. There were a few that were opposed to it. I believe with the Lehman project, there were 12 properties that were affected where the sidewalk would run across their property. 4 people were present at that public meeting, with 3 commenting. Typically, we have a comment sheet. If a citizen wants to leave any comments or concerns, they can. There was, like I said, of the 4 that attended, 3 were provided comments. 1 was in favor, 1 was against, and then 1 wanted the sidewalk, requested the sidewalk being on the other side of the street. And then with the Ogden project, there were 9 properties that were affected, and again, 4 attended that meeting. 3 commented. 1, again, had requested the sidewalk on the other side of the street. 2 were in favor, and then 1 opposed via their neighbor that attended the meeting. So overall, the projects were well received. With the Ogden project, we have 5 total acquisitions, whether that is the need for easements or the need to acquire personal property off the right-of-way. To date, we have 1 of 5 acquisitions completed on the Ogden project, and with the Lehman project, we are complete with property acquisition. So if you have any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them.
Questions for Mr. Hunt? Yes, sir.
Just like to add, Mayor, we went out to bid. We had 5 respondents. The lowest bid was Stuart Ritchie at $177,019.50. We recommend your approval.
Any other comments, questions? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Municipal Order Ordinance number 2013, number 5, the first reading.
Ordinance rezoning real estate. Ordinance rezoning 2 tracts of land containing 7.1912 acres from RS1A single-family residential to PUD planned unit development located at 2922 Small House Road, presently owned by Small House Road Partners, LLC.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Waltrip and second by Denning. Mr. Febo.
Mayor and Commissioner, I would ask Steve Hunter to come up and to field any of the questions you may have on this ordinance. Steve?
What we generally do on for those of y'all watching, what we generally do on zoning requests is we vote generally just straight up and down on the record. We have the option of holding a full hearing, which means that we have to go out and advertise and send notices and that sort of thing. We haven't done that since I've been here that I recall. If there's any opposition, what we generally do is a midpoint where we allow people either to be represented or to make comments based on what they may have said at the Planning and Zoning Commission. So unless there's any objection, I think there are some people who are opposed in the audience. We'll do the mid one if that's all right with everybody. All right, Mr. Hunter, if you would give us just a quick brief.
Sure. Really, I'll just be glad to answer any questions you all might have. You guys got a copy of the recommendation, staff report, minutes. But we had we had a public hearing on March the 7th to zone the property PUD, but the case took a kind of an odd twist that night. While we were doing other cases, several of the neighbors and the developer, the applicant, were downstairs talking about changes to the general development plan or the binding elements. So right as the hearing took off for this case, even before I gave my staff report, I believe the applicant's attorney stepped forward and submitted basically a new general development plan right there on the floor of the Planning Commission, which what that means is new binding elements were submitted right there as I was getting ready to give my report. So I was actually reading a new set of binding elements kind of off the top of my head right here at the podium. So I'd be glad to walk through the binding elements if you want me to tell you what changed, but what you saw are the revised binding elements that were basically negotiated or back and forth on the floor of the Planning Commission. So you saw the final version, but if you're curious about what changed during the night, or the applicant can get up and explain a little bit what changed, or the neighbors, but several of the binding elements were revised, if not all of them, that night on the floor of the Planning Commission. So what was a PUD rezoning with townhomes and single family, or attached and detached, was changed to all detached single family. 35 units went down to 28 units, but actually went down, went up, went down, and ended up at 28. Building material percentages went up, road accesses went up, square footages went up and down and back and forth to a final negotiated number. Some garages went from one-car garages to two-car garages. So I'll be glad to walk you through all these changes, but basically the whole plan was revised on the floor of the Planning Commission, I think in an attempt to work with the neighbors from the developer standpoint. A lot of neighbors got up and spoke in opposition and back and forth on these binding element issues related to traffic and access and lots and building materials and garages and bonus rooms. It kind of went on and on. But ultimately the Planning Commission called the hearing to a close, deliberated, and voted 8-3 to send you guys a recommendation to approve. And again, the applicant's here, the developer, and I believe several neighbors. But I'd be glad to answer any specific questions you all would have. That's a quick summary of any of the items in your packet or what transpired that night on the floor of the Planning Commission.
Just as a reminder to those in the audience, we do have a packet with the information from the Planning and Zoning hearing, and I suspect that most, if not all of us, watched the hearing either on replay or live as it went on. Are there any questions for Mr. Hunter? Mr. Walter?
The lots fronting small house, is it depicted in what you have now, or will it be a separate plat on how? Are the lots going to face? Is the back of the lot going to face small house?
You know that,
or has that been taken care of yet?
Well, that was an interesting question. Is an interesting question. What was submitted the night of the hearing was a conceptual lot layout that you guys see something like this in your packet. But it depicted these attached single-family units and a proposed access point. Well, as the night moved on and the attached units were taken out of the development plan, access points were increased to 3. It became clear that this site plan was no longer valid. So standing here tonight, I can't tell you exactly what the final site plan will be, or whether or not the houses will face small house or be to the reverse. All I can tell you is the binding elements set a cap for the number of units at 28. The square footages of the two kind of types of units. There'll be an internal road network that'll be submitted with the preliminary plat, and there'll be up to 3 access points, but there still could end up being 2 or 1 depending on final site engineering.
Well, at this point, if I understand it right, there's 28 lots, but they can be configured. How they're going to be configured is not yet been determined?
Correct. Yeah, the lots, a max of 28. There was no minimum or maximum cap set on the size of the lots. Initially, there was a concept plan, but
right.
It was just a concept plan. It still could have changed with final engineering. But I think we saw kind of how the street network would look. As the case changed and we got away from the attached product to detached, clearly the developer is going to have to go back and re-engineer the whole 7 acres. And assuming the road network stays the same, it could be similar, but it could be different. Again, with no minimum or maximum caps on the size of the lot and it being a PUD, the applicant's going to have a little freer range in a typical single family to create a varying lot sizes that could range from 5,000 square foot up to 1 acre or bigger if he chose. Now, he may have a concept, and he mentioned that night he had kind of a vision for the product, and he may say there's not going to be anything less than 7,000 square foot, but there was no harm or firm commitment on the lot sizes other than the cap at 28 and the building square footages for the structures.
Is there any other review during the process that will, obviously he'll have to do a plat, right?
He'll have to submit a preliminary plat. There's a review at that point, correct. A plat would have to be filed with the Planning Commission to ultimately lay out the street network, bond the street facilities, and propose some kind of lot layout that we would review to make sure they're in compliance with the binding elements. And then the plat goes before the Planning Commission for approval. That I guess if someone had a question, they could come to the Planning Commission and question why the plat is configured in such a way.
But there is another stage in there that has to be done.
Yeah, it would be a platting stage, correct.
Yes, sir.
Steve, binding element number 8, explain that to me.
Okay.
And especially in relationship, did you say you're not going to have houses fronting Small House Road?
Well, if you read binding element 8, again, it's renumbered, by the way. From the original set we had, it was actually binding element number 9. A binding element was basically deleted, which dealt with the townhomes or attached. So this became binding element 8, and what it now says, and it was revised in several configurations, it says residences shall consist of a minimum of 1,600 square feet of heated living space under roof, exclusive porches and garages. So if you just read that first part, which was original, basically says everything has to be at least 1,600. But then this last section was tagged on. It said, with the exception of those lots which front Small House Road, will have a minimum of 1,400 square foot heated living space under roof and garage, exclusive of porches and garages. I think what that did was, where there were townhomes, there's now going to be single family, and those units get to be smaller than the ones to the rear. But now we won't know how many of those front Small House till they come and design their plat. But when it says front Small House, I'm going to take that as the lots that are touching the road. That doesn't necessarily mean to me that the houses have to face the road. It's just the lots that are going to touch Small House could have a smaller square footage than the lots that are going to be kind of between the front row of homes and, let's say, Beddington to the rear. Those homes would have to be 1,600 square foot at least.
I understood the square footage, but I guess what was throwing me off was the word in front here.
It says the lots front, so that, I think the intention was there's going to be lots that touch the road. We don't know how many. It's going to come down to the access points. The developer may, I'm assuming, choose to make them front the street, but again, based on the street design, right now, if he used the conceptual street design he has now, I could see where the lots may have to face inward. But there was some discussion about potential alleyways or reverse frontage roads that may make these rear-loaded structures that then the houses could front the street. But there was no firm commitment, in my opinion, in this binding element 8 that forced the developer to make the homes face the street. Just those structures can be smaller than the ones to the rear. And again, the developer may want to get up here and explain to you what he really intends to do, but without a plat in front of me, I really don't know for sure exactly how the houses are going to be oriented on the road. But I can tell you there will only be a maximum of 3 access points. So whatever number of structures are along the road, they're going to have their access, at least most of them, to some internal street to the rear. It's confusing.
Yeah, it is.
Sorry.
In the future, is it possible that we have the plat and other phases of design and so on before it comes to the City Commission?
I don't think it's possible. I don't know if it's practical because, again, it's a concept plan at the zone change level. You bring the zoning forward with an idea of a general land use description. Typically, developers may not do all their hard engineering on a kind of conditional zoning approval. They're still trying to see if even they're moving forward with the zoning. They typically don't have their streets ironed out down to the exact location. The engineering tends to occur later. Sometimes they happen close together. The plat will be being worked on or it'll be filed. But technically the zoning occurs first, the plat comes second, and that's when the hard engineering occurs, and we would be bonding the infrastructure down to the exact dollar amount. So typically that's going to happen afterwards. In fact, you couldn't file the plat until the zoning was approved to start with. But you could have a preliminary plat, and that's kind of what you had with that concept plan. But like a lot of zone changes, you see that, then by the time they get to the plat, the lot lines move or shift. Maybe there's 28 lots depicted and it ends up being 27 because the hard engineering and setbacks come into play, and then it's a detailed site plan at that point. It's possible, but again, I don't see that you're going to see a lot of solid concept plans. They're always conceptual at this point.
In that particular plan, is that going to show the flow, runoff water and where it will be going?
When they get ready to do their building permits, in this case, there would not be the requirement to have a full detailed development plan. There'll be a preliminary plat. They'll look at the roads and the drainage associated with the roads, but the actual stormwater runoff associated with the individual 28 homes would happen at the building permit level, home by home. And then they would be reviewed by the Planning Commission and Public Works Department for stormwater. But we'll look at the stormwater for the road when the road plans are put forward. And again, you have a conceptual plan. It just happened to change that night, which was a little unusual.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
One more. What goes into the decision of whether a traffic study is required or not?
50. It's 50 residential units or 500 average daily trips. There's other thresholds that the City Public Works have on the class of traffic studies, but in general sense, it's 50 residences or 500 average daily trips. And this one didn't meet the trigger point for that. However, there was a traffic study reference that the city did in 2009 that sort of put this whole road project together. So there was kind of a master study that we were able to latch onto that we typically wouldn't have for residential development under 50 units like that.
And that was done before the changes at Small House.
It was done prior to the road being reconfigured, but it's what set the design into play for the road reconfiguration. And that night, the Public Works Department testified that they did look at future land uses, potential build-outs, not just on that corner, but in a larger scale as they designed the road to accommodate future traffic in the whole general area of that part of town. So we did have a study, in a sense, that was done by the city.
Any other questions for Mr. Hunter? All right, thank you, Steve.
Thank you, guys.
At this time, the opposition, I don't think you're represented by council tonight. Is that correct? Those who spoke at the previous meeting are welcome to come up and summarize their comments if they'd like to. Obviously, since we're not holding a new hearing, someone new could not step up because that would be providing new evidence for us to bring forth. So is there someone that would be interested in speaking? And this is Sandra Persley of 1319 Fleener Way.
Correct.
Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. And I can only speak on the things that I mentioned last meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, darn. Okay. What I had talked about the last time that I was speaking on behalf of someone that had brought it to my attention was some water issues that they were having at a home on Cave Mill, and were we going to have those water issues backing up into Mitchell Heights or Beddington Way. You had mentioned it as well just a moment ago. And since then, I know that there are 2 homes on Cave Mill since the redevelopment of the road that have had problems on their front yard with water coming even into their garages. And then Beddington, I had heard that there was a couple of backyards that were having some water issues as well. So I appreciate you folks looking into that. And being our property does, we live on Fleener Way, and our property does back up and will touch this new development. And so we are concerned. My husband and I had just this last year have put $15,000 worth of stamped concrete in our backyard and developing our backyard into something that we're hopefully can enjoy very much. So I'm trusting that there will not be any water issues that will flood into our backyards. And other than that, I think that's all I can speak about, other than just to say that we in our neighborhoods, such as you probably in your neighborhoods, love our neighborhood. We're a walking neighborhood and appreciate our neighborhoods. And we just trust that what develops will develop into something that will be very pleasing around us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Persley. I don't see anyone else stepping forward. Mr. Brooks, I know you're here representing Small House Road Partners. Do you have anything that you'd like to summarize from the testimony of your clients?
I guess I'll be really brief. I just want to follow up on some things Mr. Hunter said. This was a really unusual hearing, and it kind of put a lot of stress on the Planning Commission and its staff because there was a lot of changing going on. All changes that we either offered or were asked to make this a more palatable zone change for the neighbors, and we were happy to do that. The only thing I would say to you in a general sense, a couple things. All of these questions about lot configuration and what street we face and stormwater come up so often in zoning cases, but really, with respect, they're not zoning issues. Those are engineering issues that come up later, and trust your Planning Commission staff to address them. They will, very much to the frustration of developers sometimes, but they will address those issues. So what you're down to is a standard that I know you're really familiar with. We have this new comprehensive plan that you passed, and you paid a lot of money for, and this new comprehensive plan calls for what's called moderate density development in this area. And notwithstanding the complaints about how dense we are just barely dense enough to meet that standard of 4.6 units per acre. So never to belittle how hard your job may be, but in terms of casting a difficult vote, but just on the kind of the way the lawyer looks at it from the standard that you are asked to apply, which is whether this application is consistent with the comprehensive plan, it is, with all respect, an easy one. I mean, it clearly is. So I hope you'll vote that way. Thanks.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Brooks? Any other comments or questions or discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Abstain due to business conflict. Municipal Order 2013, number 49.
Municipal order accepting donation from John and Linda Kelly Family Charitable Foundation to expand the scope of service of Camp Happy Days.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Denning and second by Waltrip. Mr. Fellow.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is the 6th year that the City of Bowling Green Park and Rec has received a contribution from John and Linda Kelly. I thought it'd be appropriate to bring this contribution here and have it accepted by the Commission to thank John and Linda for their $24,000 to help Camp Happy Days.
We appreciate Mr. Kelly's contribution to the community, not only through this, that is service on the Warren County Downtown Economic Development Authority as well. We really appreciate all the hard work that he puts into that too, and thank him again for this donation. Any other comments? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Municipal Order 2013-50.
Municipal order approving and authorizing the mayor to execute a motorcycle lease agreement with Motorsports of Bowling Green Incorporated for a lease of 4 standard police package Harley-Davidson motorcycles for the sum of $1 each.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Waltrip and second by Mr. Williams. Mr. Febo.
Mayor, this is the 9th year that we received this lease from Harley Davidson of Bowling Green. Prior to that, it was done under Bill the first year, I believe, and it was from Cornelius Martin, and we've carried it on. Harley Davidson wants to continue on that legacy. Under the terms of the agreement, we get the use of 4 Harley Davidson motorcycles, and we pay $1, and at the end of the year, we give the motorcycles back to Harley Davidson. And then we get 4 new ones, hopefully. Jim Hyde is here if you have any questions about this protocol or what we're trying to do.
Any questions from?
We just
trying to
counted.
think of one. Rick's already counted out
I've
4.
counted out 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I know
No, 3.
Oh,
No, 3.
You're not a bike rider, huh?
Right there. Those 3.
If I could afford the $1, I'd pay it.
Mr. Martin, when that,
Yes.
Kevin mentioned that when that started up, he was very gracious and
absolutely.
actually stepped forward and through another party sought me out to at least begin discussions on that deal. And he was very gracious in doing that. And to continue it is just unbelievable through this number of years. So appreciate the family.
Appreciate the Martin family, and
Yes.
Chad Martin is their president now. I run into him on occasion. It's good to see him too, and thank you for what they do. Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Municipal Order 2013, number 51.
Municipal order authorizing the approval and submission of fiscal year 2014 annual plan for the Housing Choice Voucher Program.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Waltrip and second by Denning. Mr. DeFebo.
Commissioners, municipal orders 6 and 7 are in the same family, and I'd like to explain them together and then have Brent Childers answer any questions you have. It's HUD, Housing Urban Development, loves plans, and under their receipt of money, we have to provide a number of plans. One is a 5-year plan, the second is a yearly annual plan, and the third is we have to give them a plan how we plan to run the program. So tonight we're doing the 1-year plan as well as how we plan to run the program. Municipal Order 51 is the 1-year plan. Municipal Order 52 is the administrative plan. Under the second item number 7, we've made a number of changes that Brent has thought necessary to more efficiently run the program, and if you would like to have him vet those changes, we can do that at the appropriate time.
Any questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Municipal Order 2013, number 52.
Municipal order authorizing and approving revisions to the Housing Choice Voucher Administrative Plan for the city's Housing Choice Voucher Program.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Denning and second by Waltrip.
Maybe we should let Brent come,
Oh,
because
he
he came
came
from the
all the
meeting
way
all the
down.
way here, so I think we should let him say something.
He wrote a 114-page manual, and I know at least one on this board read every word of it, so
And he's got a tie on.
that's true.
Tied it myself too. Thank you, Gene. The administrative plan is really our outline on how the program operates. The annual plan is just a HUD requirement that we have to submit about annual changes or expected changes over the next fiscal year. The administrative plan is really our guide. That's our toolkit. We use that every day to determine someone's eligibility, whether or not they stay in the program, the termination processes. This is our policy, and it's written in accordance with federal law or federal regulation. And HUD gives us certain things that they say, you will have this, you will follow this. Then they give us other things they say, you must have a policy for this. So we have some local options in there. So a part of this is our local options on how we want to run the program. And the other part of it is HUD is telling us you're going to have this in there. And I outlined the changes in the memo, the major changes. Most of the actual changes or amendments in the plan are just naming of positions, titles, things like that, bringing things up to date. We felt it necessary to make these improvements. We talked about the cuts to funding through the sequestration over the last couple months. That's been a popular term here lately. We're trying to see those, plan for those, and move forward. We have to continue to run a program of 606 vouchers. If we take a cut in funding, we still have to make sure that we're providing assistance to 600 families. And that's what we're trying to do by making these changes. If you have any specific questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Like Gene said, I dressed up and wore a tie this evening, so I'd be glad to answer anything that you might have.
I do have a question. Make
Yes, sir.
sure I understood what you said. If we have a cut in funding, is that right? A cut in funding, we still maintain the same number of recipients?
Yes, sir.
Do they receive a reduced stipend?
Well, that gives us the ability to make some fluctuations, and HUD has sent out recommendations on ways to manage that. Now, luckily, with this reduced cut in funding, we'll still be able to service everything and be okay, we think right now. We think that we've made enough changes to where we're going to be fine. We can reduce our payment standard, and that is based on fair market rents. We can change that to fluctuate the assistance amount. We can change our minimum rent, which is included in here. That will fluctuate the payment amount. We can change our utility standards. We can change our bedroom size standards. So there are certain manipulations within the program guidelines to give us the ability to change some of those assistance, because it's really just a formula. So you're just tweaking some of the variables to change that end result of the formula. So we do have some of that flexibility built in.
But the amount of funding doesn't have a reserve pot that we can just move money over. You're manipulating the formula, this algorithm, to make sure that it all ends up with the same amount of money, the same amount of people helped, but there may be some changes about how much they get helped, the size of the
Correct. We don't have, we are able to carry any previous year reserves for 1 year. So if we didn't spend $150,000 last year, we can carry that $150,000 for an additional year. So that's where our reserve comes from. So it's important that we do manage everything as tightly as possible to make sure that everybody gets assistance, but also where we have some ability to handle weathers in the storm as we go through the next year. So we have a little bit of reserve, and HUD sometimes does have set-aside funding. The last couple of years we have received some set-aside funding, but that is a HUD formula. We just request it, they do all the calculation, then they tell us, yes, you qualify, and yes, you're getting this much. 1 year I think we got $30,000, the year before that I think it was $138,000. But there are certain very specific criteria and certain factors that you have to meet in order to get that set-aside funding. And it has to be authorized by Congress, so the funding has to be available also.
I understand. Any other questions? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. Municipal Order 2013-53.
Municipal order accepting and adopting the City of Bowling Green Language Access Plan.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Waltrip, second by Williams. Mr. Febo.
Yes, thank you. There's approximately 49 different languages spoken in the city of Bowling Green. 13% of our residents do not speak English as their essential language. As a city, we have a responsibility to provide services to all residents and to reach out as best we can to communicate with people who do not speak English with proficiency. Tonight, we're here to ask you to approve the Bowling Green Language Access Plan. This is a plan that Leda Becker, our International Liaison Officer, has put together to help guide how city employees will approach problems or issues with people who have limited English proficiency. It might be helpful to let Leda come up and celebrate with you some of the achievements and what the essence of this program is about.
I think you're on call, Ms. Becker.
We'll see how she do. I didn't tell her she was on, so we'll see.
Hello. Okay. Excellent. The Language Access Plan was drafted in April 2012 is essential in order to guide the work of the International Communities Liaison and put a framework of how that program was going to be established, because essentially, although it was adopted as a citywide position, there wasn't really any carryover, and so starting the program from the beginning. The plan itself was based on providing language measures for city employees when they were encounter with an individual with limited English proficiency, and that was access to a qualified interpreter. And so we adopted a telephone interpretation system that allowed us to access over 170 different languages that are commonly spoken in Kentucky. And so anyone within the city can have access as a city staff or personnel. We underwent training of 126 personnel, staff in direct public contact positions in order to provide interpretation services. And once that was established and running and personnel were trained, we have initiated a number of outreach efforts within the community, whether it's been the establishment of the International Communities Advisory Council, which meets every other month here at the Commission Chambers, or the Amigos Resource Network, which helps identify gaps in resources for the Hispanic and Latino community, or working with a number of community partners in order to ensure that citizens and residents that have limited English proficiency have access to city services. That's in a nutshell. The plan was revised because our phone system changed, and it really, because we had a patchwork phone system, it was different how you could access the telephone interpretation service. And so those changes are reflected in the revised plan, and it is a lot simpler to access that service currently. Any other questions?
Any comments or questions?
Just only a comment. One, you're doing a wonderful job with, now you've been in your position a little bit over a year now, if my memory serves
14 months. Yes.
Memory serves me correctly, and I think in May the spotlight on Bowling Green is having to do with the international liaison position. So I hope that members of the public will take advantage of that and see what all the city has done over the last 14, 15, 16 months in this area. But you're to be commended for the job that you're doing, and obviously other city employees, but you're to be commended for your leadership in that role.
Thank you.
No, it's been quite a challenge for you, and I think what you're doing is a great job.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Slade. Appreciate it. Any other comments or discussion? Please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. First reading of ordinance 2013, number 6.
Ordinance annexing property by consent. Ordinance annexing 56.96 acres of property located at 1777 Glasgow Road and 164 Fred Madison Road, with property presently owned by the Intermodal Transportation Authority Incorporated, and 1.35 acres of right-of-way located on Mitzpah Road, for a total of 58.31 acres, and said territory being contiguous to existing city limits.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Waltrip and second by Denning. Mr. DeFebo.
Thank you. In your packet is a request from Ron Bunce, President of the Chamber of Commerce, on behalf of the Kentucky Transport, requesting annexation of 58 acres. This will allow the ITA to continue its work and bringing new enterprises to our community. It's a consensual annexation, and Gene feels there isn't any issue unless you have them. So we recommend your approval.
Any comments or questions? We have representatives from the ITA here if you have any comments or questions for them.
Meredith Robinson and Julie Sapp are both here.
And Gaines Penn.
I didn't see Penn.
I don't believe we have any questions, so please call the roll.
Waltrip?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Denning?
Yes.
Wilkerson?
Yes. It's the last item on our agenda. Our next scheduled meeting is Tuesday, April 16th, 2013. Happy to have you attend, and thanks for tuning in.